welcome back to another edition of the Edge podcast. Publisher Brenden Slaughter here for BeaversEdge.com, joined by Beavers Edge writers TJ Mathewson and Ryan Harlan, the whole crew back here with you guys to preview Oregon State's matchup versus Idaho State. The Beavers will kick off the 2024 season at 3:30 at Reser Stadium on Saturday. Going to be a hot one, guys. We're going to be inside, so no need to bring the sunscreen, but it's definitely going to be a little toasty. I always like shorts and t-shirt kind of football coverage weather. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And it's a good kickoff time, too.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. I really think we're underestimating just some of the beauty of some of these kickoff times this year.
Oh, it's fabulous this year.
Seriously. One of the few positives of no more real Pac-12 conference is real kickoff times.
Bye-bye, 7:30. Bye-bye.
It is just
I think there's like what? There's
insane.
like one night game this year?
3:30, like 3:30 for
Like
working
two.
media is perfect.
Yeah. No, it's
Perfect.
Now,
It's like
I'll say this.
3:30 and 12:30.
I'll say this. Before we get, 100% agree with you, TJ. Whoever the geniuses were that decided to have the school down south kick off 1 hour after, clearly wasn't thinking about the people, unlike y'all, who don't have to just go across town to get to Reser, but maybe those who have to take the I-5 down. Yeah, I'm definitely leaving a little extra room. I think the I-5 is going to be pretty packed this weekend. Be a lot of college football fans, but nevertheless, super stoked.
I have to give credit to Duck fans. They actually, to watch the game this week, and they'll have to be there.
Ooh, I do.
There's
TJ,
no other way.
I appreciate a good bit of salt on a podcast. And, I did say we were maybe going to mention the Comcast news. And, Beaver fans, there haven't been a lot for you guys to take victory laps on in the last year. You can take a minor victory lap in the misery of, Duck, Husky, Bruin, and Trojan fans, all of whom played a significant part in the conference's demise, particularly the LA schools first. And, it sounds like from what it's only Comcast is only blacking out Big Ten Network. Like Rip City Mornings, Justin Myers and I ran through Oregon's. Like Oregon's only on Big Ten Network this Saturday. And then they're not again for the rest of the season. So I think it's more like these first couple games that will be obviously bummer, but like, guys, you get into basketball season, good luck. You know what I mean? Like all those games are on Big Ten Network.
But also the thing about it, it's such to be honest, like just to I can't believe I'm siding with the schools who caused the end of the conference. But the solution to this problem really isn't that much different, and really isn't that complicated. There are a lot of people who want to stop using Comcast anyways because they charge an exorbitant amount of money for a bunch of channels you're not going to watch anyways. And Big Ten Network's available on YouTube TV. It's available on Fubo TV. As a consummate Mariner fan, I Root Sports. Yeah. And Root Sports is only available on two platforms, on Comcast and on Fubo. Guess which thing I watch it on now is Fubo.
Yeah.
Because people don't want to pay for Comcast. And it's probably the exact same thing for people who want to be able to watch Big Ten Network.
To that point, and Ryan, I'm sure you've seen too, just on the damn board, we're obviously going to get into more Beaver stuff to come, but obviously you've seen, some Beaver fans on the damn board, checking in about, TV channels and asking about the CW. And I think there's been a fair amount of people who have been on our board kind of weighing their television options. And all I can say is, I think a lot of Beaver fans this year, guys, will feel liberated. The fact that the CW and CBS Sports Network, which is where most of the quote road game, actually all the road games, will be on this year. I think minus the Boise game. Those are both really easy channels to find in Hulu TV, YouTube TV. TJ mentioned Fubo if you want to get a bigger plethora of channels. Like there is now options. And you guys think how hard was it to just find Pac-12 Network sometimes? So like in that respect, like it kind of turned out to be okay. Like maybe a better viewing situation for Beaver fans. You got to like that.
Oh yeah, I mean a national brand, right? Compared to the Big Ten Network. So it's much more easily accessible and at least for my parents and their sake of watching games, like it's going to be a lot easier for them to find both the CW and CBS because that's where they watch a lot of games still on TV through Comcast and all that. And speaking on the Pac-12 network, I'm like, in Virginia, that's
No.
non-existent. Like the
Yeah.
only way when I was living there, it's like the only way I could watch Pac-12 games is if they were shown on ESPN and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning
That's nuts.
because of the late
Oh
kickoff
yeah.
times. So I'm all for it. Good
and you can
weather, great kickoff times. Like I don't have to be at Reser, which I love being there. Don't get me wrong, at an exorbitant late time of the evening either. It's like it's perfect. I can't ask for anything better.
and you could also stream it too, right? You could go on Coin and stream it, right?
No, I'm talking directly from like Virginia. There,
Yeah.
we didn't have that. No.
Oh
Right,
yeah.
no, but you could go on the Coin website, stream it all right. 'Cause it's already over the air anyways.
Pac-12? No, not when
No,
he was...
not the Pac-12 network, but watching the CW, you can because you could not do
Oh,
that. on the Pac-12 network.
yeah. CW still
Right.
being the national brand that it is. But yeah, to Ryan's point, like, shoot, guys, I can't even. Again, I am very blessed to do what I do. I love what I do, but man, I can't tell you how many the last 3-4 years where I'm getting home at 3:30 in the morning after a good late night game. So that, and obviously it's just more optimal to not have fans driving back super late at night. So I think, like TJ said, it's just going to be a real win with a lot of these kickoff times outside of Boise State. That's a really crummy kickoff time. I don't know, like, again, actually I do know Fox said nobody wants this slot. Hey, Boise State, Oregon State, you guys want an actually televised game? And they're like, when is it? 9 a.m. on Black Friday. And they're probably like, we need the money. So, I mean, again,
Do good numbers.
it will noon on the numbers will do well. And I mentioned this too. Earliest West Coast Oregon State game I've ever seen in my lifetime. There's been an Oregon State game at 9 a.m. once, but it was a back east game when they played Wisconsin. Other than that, I don't have a record of a kickoff that early. 11 a.m. I remember at Reser once.
Didn't they play Ohio State in 2018 at 9 a.m.?
Yeah. So, but again, or 9 or 10. So, but again, still like what, noon, 1 o'clock local time. So just think about like the football players just your body is not typically ready to go, football go at like 9 a.m. So, we're putting the cart way before the horse and talking about game 12 before we get into game 1. But nevertheless,
but no, I get that though. Speaking of my experience of swimming, vastly different sport, of course, than football, but those early times I had to get there to the pool, it's just like your body's not ready to like go like right away, but getting in that cold water gets you awake, ready to go, and the adrenaline starts going after a certain point. So
yeah,
so it's like it should work out, but yeah, it's not the most ideal scenario when they're basically going to be up at 9 a.m. local time for that game. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And last point on that, because we talked about this, I think early weeks of fall camp, the three of us. Let's take our bets, our friendly bets now. Snow for that game or no snow?
Yes.
I say snow.
I would say dry and cold.
Okay. All right. So we got 2 snows and a dry and a cold. We'll check back in on that in 14 weeks and see what's up. But nevertheless, Oregon State will be kicking off the season against Idaho State this Saturday at Reser Stadium. It will not be cold. It will not be dry. It will not be snow. Let me rephrase. It will not be cold. It will be dry, but it will be hot and dry this weekend. Obviously, we're going to get into the game, talk a little Idaho State, and kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it. But, on the surface, this is obviously a warm-up game for Oregon State and a game against a lower tier FCS opponent. We'll kind of talk about the strengths and advantages, but a game that, Oregon State shouldn't have to stress about too much in order to walk away with a comfortable win. But let's go ahead and just start with the biggest news that we got to cover, guys, since the last time we talked. Obviously depth chart came out. Trent Bray had his press conference. Not a lot of surprises for us as far as what we talked about, how we nailed it. And other than quarterback, as not one, not two, but the 3 folks on this lovely panel, none of us had Giovanni McCoy pegged as the starting quarterback. I know all 3 of us probably liked Jabari Johnson the most out of the room, but we acquiesced to Ben Gulbranson simply based on the fact that Jabari's a little green out there, still, understanding the nuances of the college game full speed. And that we didn't think that Giovanni McCoy looked better than Ben Gulbranson. Now, that being said, Oregon State did, as they've always done in my history of covering the team. They have 3 weeks of camp that are open, and they close down the last week. And that's usually when, you separate the men from the boys, for lack of better terms. And, in this particular case, TJ, we talked about it when we were closing out the podcast last time. And it was just as we had technical difficulties and lost Ryan. But I mentioned, is it possible that one of these three guys just has that gamer in him? Maybe not going to look the best in practice, but you throw him out there in a game, he's going to play better. And based on Giovanni McCoy being named the starter, there's a couple things. Trent Bray mentioned, quote, he made the throws in practice to separate himself in that final week. That was news to us, as he wasn't making those throws consistently in the 3 weeks that we saw, which again, a guy can make improvement. That can happen for sure. But I also think it's possible that they, ratcheted things up a little bit, guys, made that week as close to game-like as possible. And maybe Giovanni did just rise to the occasion in that particular instance. And, we just didn't have eyes on it. So I think, somewhere in the middle is probably the most true situation as to how it came be. They didn't necessarily dive into it too deep as far as the decision, but, ultimately it's going to be Giovanni McCoy. And, I think, it's going to be fine for Idaho State. And I'm curious to see how he performs and if he's closer to that player that we looked at statistically at Idaho, because we talked about it, guys. The player we saw statistically at Idaho did not match up with the player we were seeing the first 3 weeks of camp. Now, from what we're hearing from the coaches, it sounds like that player is maybe closer. Do you kind of get that sense as well?
So I think the biggest thing that I took away from what the coaches were telling us is that Giovanni was consistent in a number of ways. Playing, digesting the playbook itself, operating the huddle, making the right calls, every factor you can imagine that a quarterback is responsible for. They said he was the most consistent among all of them. Like, a lot of that you can't really measure quantitatively. Right. So you have to take their word for it, because they watch the film of practice closer than we do, or we catch it in live action, but we don't need to scrub practice film to write our practice reports.
Their salaries are a little higher than us for football too, TJ, from what I heard too. Those who just an observation, but they get paid real well to look at film.
So they do, and ultimately this is their team and their decision to make with Giovanni McCoy. I will say I stand by everything I saw with my own two eyes in practice. I think the two of you would agree with that, and most everyone else I've talked to, I feel like the only thing most of the media members could agree upon with the quarterback room is that Giovanni wasn't starting. Right? Am I wrong? I felt like that was one of the things we agreed upon the most. But
I mean, after that second scrimmage, yes, for sure.
It felt like they liked the idea of what he could do with his legs. And if we're comparing it with the three quarterbacks, he's like the middle athlete of the three. Ben's the worst, Jabari's the best when it comes to moving around in the pocket and outside the pocket. But what you don't have with Jabari is the experience of playing with the first team offense or playing in a game atmosphere, period. Right. So that's where you lean on, well, we're going to have a little bit more upside with Giovanni if we're going to give him the football and give him, the first however many series against Idaho State. So even if they're going to name him the starter, they wouldn't say what the game plan is, but I think all three quarterbacks are playing against Idaho State. Like, Giovanni could play the first half. Ben could get 2 drives to start the second half. Jabari could get the final 2 drives of the game. If it goes as they anticipate, they're going to run the ball a lot anyways. The quarterbacks are going to have a whole lot of pressure on them, and they can get more tape on all three quarterbacks. I mean, Idaho State might play 4, so why don't you play 3? They're already doing that. You can't. You don't really lose anything by doing that. And Giovanni McCoy, even if they're not going to admit that publicly, could already know, hey, you're going to start, but we'd like to play all 3 guys, and just understand 4 drives and you're done for the day. It's like, okay, like that could be it. But still, I'd say very interesting decision. to feel like they made the right decision, I'm going to need to see it on the field, to be honest. Because when we watched him on the field, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Turnovers, like the arm strength still lacks, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't think his wheels were unbelievable. Like not as much of a difference maker as I feel like they want it to be. But we'll have to see once the pads go on and they start playing the game on Saturday.
Ryan?
I mean, TJ hit it right on the head. I didn't see it at all during those first 3 weeks of practice. It looked like the same guy that we saw in spring ball. Just I didn't see it whatsoever. And I kind of was thinking, I'm like, well, it has to be behind the scenes. It has to be he's either impressing in the classroom when they're looking at film after practice and those closed practices as well too. That's where you try to simulate a game environment as best as you can. And it seems like he seemed to have, rose to the challenge and took over that job, because otherwise, like, I just didn't see it. The arm strength, the accuracy, the decision making left some things to be desired, is the best way that I can put it. I've been very outspoken on how much I didn't think Giovanni was the guy, but that's why I'm also not a coach either at the same time too. So there is that. But yeah, it was the consistency thing. That's exactly what Bray said, and and Gundy too. That was the word that they used to describe what Giovanni was able to do, and I just got to see it, like TJ. I just got to see it out on the field, because I'm more than willing to be proven wrong if Giovanni goes out there and lights up the Idaho State defense. And if not, well, it's like we could be in for a long season potentially. So
Right.
it's just seeing it all come together out on the field is my biggest thing now after him being named the starter.
Yeah, and I definitely have similar thoughts to you guys. Obviously, you guys saw the most practices out of the three of us, but from what I was able to see, being at practices and the scrimmages as well, I agreed. Now I'll say this: as far as like you have to look at it on both sides of the coin. Yes, everything you guys just said, but at the same token, nobody was hands and feet above anybody else.
Nope.
There was no like,
Nope.
oh, we didn't sit here and go, oh my gosh, Ben's here and Giovanni and like everyone was like, it was just so close as far as average quarterback play is just kind of what I would say to be, just kind of full encompassing. That being said, I don't think Oregon State's going to need their quarterback to be particularly they're not going to need them to be a rock star to be successful with this offense. I think they're going to need them to be efficient and not turn the ball over, which we'll see. But like based on the talent they have at running back, based on what we've seen, the offensive line, like I was joking with Ryan when I was talking to him earlier this week, TJ, that like I really like this Oregon State offensive line. Like if there's really a unit on this team that I really just have kind of circled is like you go look at that line, you look at the fact that there's only one guy who's less than 300 pounds, and that's Grant Stark. And Grant Stark is still a really strong and tough dude. Like as far as an under 300 pounder, I'd take him for sure. But like great size and for a great experience, and considering what they lost, like, I joked with Ryan, like, will Idaho State be able to touch whoever is under center, for Oregon State or quote in shotgun on Saturday? Because they've got a solid offensive line with some big dudes and guys who should be able to protect who's ever under center quite well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's fair. And which is why when are we going to get a proper evaluation of the quarterback? I would assume next week. Like San Diego State's not a world beater. Like,
no, they're coming off a 4-8 year, right?
Yeah, so, not a world beater by any stretch, but it's on the road.
Yeah.
Somewhat of a hostile environment. I don't even think it's fair to evaluate the quarterbacks against Oregon because I just think it's a total talent mismatch. But
Purdue, maybe
we can table that conversation for a couple weeks from now. But Purdue, at home, I think would be a solid evaluation of the quarterback. And then when you get into the meat of the Mountain West schedule, I think will be a better sense. This early season, non-conference slate, I just don't feel like it's very fair in a very level playing field to get a good evaluation.
Totally.
But even then too, like whoever they go with if it's Giovanni through the majority of that schedule, I would have to assume based on what we saw in camp that he has a short leash too. At the same time, I think all of them do, but if they were to, play all of them at some point in time throughout this season, but I would have to assume that as well.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, it's in no way like, there are no ors. I say it's in no way decided. It is decided, but like you guys said, I think they're being coy. I think they're going to play things out. You can have a guy look really good, as TJ mentioned, against Idaho State, and then look not good against Oregon, and then could still win you a handful of games this year. Like, I don't mean to, put negativity into the universe, but I think even if you had DJU under center back this year, he would look rough. Like this Oregon team is going to be tough to deal with for anybody this year.
You could have all last year's team, and it probably wouldn't matter.
Well, Michael Penix might be the one. Hey, like I think you found a kryptonite to Oregon. Like call Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer, but nevertheless, kind of going back to the Bengals a little bit in Idaho State, like. Just kind of what are your guys' early thoughts into this matchup, just as far as like, do you think there'll be any moment of like oh, hey, like it's 7-7, or do you think this will be put the gas pedal down? Like, I've kind of looked at this game, quite a bit, and Idaho State's, they return a fair amount of players, like significantly. They're one of the few teams I've seen that returns all 11 on defense. Like that's rare, right? But all 11 on defense from a team that allowed, let's throw out some crazy numbers. 78 points to Utah State last year. 62 to Idaho. That's Giovanni McCoy. 51 to Sac State. So that's just some of the more lopsided examples. So again, you figure they'll be better. But on the road, like I know Oregon State fans are always like FCS team, eyebrow raise. This is not a good FCS team. And I would be shocked if this is not a pretty lopsided blowout. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know about 7-7. I feel like the Beaver defense can have a pretty good day out there. Like that, this is still such
No, I just mean like early. I just meant like early.
Early. So I'd say instead of 7-7, I'd say maybe 7-0 in the second quarter. Like,
okay, fair.
The offense is, we're spent all this time not believing in the quarterback room, essentially. So, like, are we surprised if they only have one touchdown halfway through the second quarter?
I'd be a little surprised.
I don't know if I'd be that surprised.
Yeah.
It's a completely new offense. They've had all this time to install it, but they haven't played a game against someone else yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I would say something like that, where you're just kind of like they have to drop, like say they're unsuccessful running on a couple of early downs, they have to drop back and pass a little bit. We know from what we've seen, they're not exactly an offense that's going to chuck the ball down the field. I'd say contrary to what they said this week in some of our videos. I'd just say watching a lot of the plays they ran, they were not throwing the ball down the field at all. So if you get behind the sticks, like do you have the explosiveness to get out of those second or third and longs?
Right.
So like while they work some of this stuff out early in the game before they find a gear, say it just wouldn't be a shock if they turn their wheels a little bit on offense early in the game.
Yeah, I mean they certainly could turn the wheels a bit. But again, just like I think it's very easy to say this. Like this is the worst defense they will face all year. No question. And again, just for perspective, TJ, like again, like we mentioned, that's Utah State, I think won 4 games last year. And one of those 4 wins is putting 78 on these guys. So it's, and again, it might be 5 wins, but again, Utah State didn't go bowling last year. It's one of those things where I think for lack of better terms, you can kind of like, fumble your way into some offensive success. And I know that's not the most on cue term, but like, even if Oregon State handed the ball off, like I was just mentioning to you guys, they should be able to open up holes for Jam Griffin and Anthony Hankerson like nobody's business. Maybe there's, some quarterback inconsistency, sure. Defensively is kind of like, again, if you were to ask me where there may be a whimper of like hey, it's because, Cody Hawkins, son of Dan Hawkins. Dan Hawkins was one of the original guys who built it at Boise State, known for some quirky offense. And, I mean, can you guys, I can already say there's going to be at least 1 or 2 times where Idaho State throws some kind of double reverse quirky play where Oregon State's going to have to prove they can defend the trick play probably on the first or second drive. Maybe it's a fake punt, but like when you're Idaho State, you have to expect a lot of that stuff to come in. So like that's that point, TJ. Like that's kind of the only way I mean, with this, flipping to the other side, Oregon State's defense, particularly the secondary, like I think Idaho State's gonna have a hard time moving the ball. Like it's gonna need to be something kind of quirky, quick. I mean, there's gonna be some feeling out periods from the front seven in particular, just because those are all first full-time starters. But yeah, I mean, I think, on both sides of the ball, there's just massive advantages. I mean, special teams too. I mean, we've talked about the improvements that Everett Hayes and Josh Green have made in the offseason too. Yeah, I mean, Ryan, for you, just as far as the 3 phases of the game, does anything stand out, or do you kind of see, strengths for Oregon State, obviously across the board in this kind of what looks like a lopsided matchup too?
I think the only thing I have a little concern on is just how the offense is going to look in game. That's
Yeah,
kind of it. Just because like we've seen it in fall camp, we've seen it in spring ball, albeit more of a vanilla
sure.
look, and we don't know exactly what Gundy's gonna do and how that's gonna kind of how he's gonna call everything, how he's gonna make adjustments to the game plan after those scripted plays are done, and that's really kind of the only thing. So I'm kind of just a little maybe concerned on that. Maybe the offense has a little struggles kind of early on, but
Sure.
I think they'll find their gear. I don't really have a lot in the defense. Maybe just a couple of things of like getting those early nerves kind of settled in, and then after that, it's full speed ahead. But too, you mentioned Idaho putting what, 62 points?
62 on. That was Giovanni. Right.
No,
Giovanni
no,
puts.
Giovanni didn't play against
Oh,
Idaho
okay.
State
Okay.
either.
Okay.
So this is
Okay.
his
Oh,
first
yes, you
time
mentioned that to
playing
me. Yes.
again.
Thank you.
Yeah, first time playing against Idaho State his entire career.
Thank
So
you. Yes.
should
I
be an
forgot you mentioned that to me.
interesting matchup. Yeah. Yeah. So that was without McCoy. Now imagine what that could have been with McCoy
Right, right.
in
So
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I have actually Ryan mentioned that to me actually yesterday, and I completely spaced on it when I mentioned that. So I appreciate you mentioning that for sake of accuracy for sure. But yeah, I mean, like TJ said, there will be some hiccups. There will be, but like to your guys' or to your point, TJ, do you expect? I mean, do you expect the offense to have more hiccups than defense?
Yes, I wouldn't be worried
Yeah.
about the defense at all. I mean, that sounds like such a confident group. I
Yeah,
think the only thing I want to see from the defense is like what does the pressure look like up front?
sure.
But otherwise, like matchup wise, this is almost an ideal matchup because
Yeah.
you're
Oh
going to get a
yeah.
lot of reps through your pass rushers, and you're going to let your strength really defend you, which is your back end of the defense.
Yeah.
Because Idaho's going to throw the ball a lot, right?
Uh,
Sorry, Idaho State's going
yeah.
to throw the ball a lot. So
Totally.
so it kind of works out that way. And they're talking a lot today about how physical they want to be, and I'm sure they'll look very physical against an FCS team. This will be, I'd say, a better gauge next week, and then the week after, like how do they look and match up physically with some teams that are a little bit bigger
Sure.
across the line. So, like that'll be interesting. But I would anticipate the defense could have a pretty good day. Like I just think this works out really well for them. The only question I have is, do they have any gaffes with the communication, the in-helmet stuff that I think
Sure.
Melvin said today he'd be wearing? But otherwise, I mean, yeah, I think they're going to
Yeah.
go out there and have fun. It's going to look like a Trent Bray defense.
Right. And I guess that's my next question that I definitely want to ask you guys. Appreciate everyone tuning into this edition of the Edge podcast previewing Oregon State, Idaho State. Of the head coach and both new coordinators, who are you guys most excited to see? You most excited to see Trent Bray as a head coach, Ryan Gunderson as a first-time OC, Keith Hayward kind of seeing what tweaks he puts on what TJ just called Trent Bray's defense. I think there's definitely a case for all. I think, Bray is probably the top choice just to see, how does he handle timeouts, right? Does he want the ball on kickoffs? Does he always still want to defer, right? Like, just little intricacies like that. Like, I'm curious to see, like, Trent Bray as a defensive coordinator was on the field. Brian Lindgren is an offensive coordinator up in the booth. Is Ryan Gunderson going to be up in the booth and Keith Hayward down on the field? I think that's actually in Oregon State's game notes, so I should have
They're
looked at that
they're
before we
both
went.
going to be in the booth.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
both gonna be in
so
the booth. Yeah.
okay, so that's a bit interesting to me. So that tells
Yeah.
me that Bray is still going to have a big part in the defensive kind of animation from the sidelines because that was something he was really good at and something that was a big difference between when Bray took the job and took over for Tim Tibesar, who was in the booth, and Bray's like on the field and kind of brought that energy, and that's all what Trent Bray's about is that energy and hyping things up. And there's a couple guys on staff that meet that mark too, and Keith Hayward certainly one of them. But yeah, just throwing out for you guys, who are you most excited to see out of that trio?
I would say Gundy. I don't know if I'm looking for the energy, but he's got a
Gundy's a
he's
little bit
got
more. He's a
it's
cool
his group
cucumber,
who's
man.
got all the question marks around it, and he's the
Yeah,
quarterback's coach.
yeah.
So
Gundy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gundy is he's a cool cucumber, man. Like he's not the rah-rah guy, but you know what I mean? Like he strikes me as like that real quiet kind of intelligence. And I think you get that from being kind of a backup quarterback, which is kind of what he was for his Oregon State career. Just kind of always taking notes, always learning things, kind of the sneaky smart guy back there. But yeah, for sure.
He was saying too, it was like, yeah, when I got to run out of the tunnel at Easter, it was I got to put a hat on the sideline and stand there with a clipboard.
At least he leaned into it. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But to a degree, I think I'm excited just to kind of see. It's maybe kind of a bit of a cop-out answer, but all three to a degree.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of, we've seen a little bit behind the scenes of what Hayward has done with defense. Just want to see that in game, and then the offense as well too, what that looks like, and then how Trent Bray handles being a head coach for the first time. And
Yeah.
I expect it to be a lot of the same as he was as a defensive coordinator, going up and down that sideline, constantly pacing,
Yeah.
bringing the energy. And I think it was Samisi today that was like, yeah, if you give Bray a helmet and shoulder pads, and I've been saying it for a long time, it's like if you give Bray a helmet and shoulder pads, he's gonna go out there and make a tackle. Like, sure, he may not necessarily wrap a guy up, but he's gonna go out there and try.
Hey man,
Least,
Trent Bray still looks like he's in football shape, guys. And I'll just say this, as a single successful guy in Corvallis, I mean, you got to keep yourself in good shape, right?
He sprints everywhere. He sprints
I
everywhere.
mean, just saying, Corvallis' most eligible bachelor, everybody. No, I'm just kidding. Just teasing. Not really, but kind of. Oh,
well,
no. But no, like all jokes aside, like, yeah, like that was one thing that like I think was particularly endearing, Ryan, to Trent Bray from like the moment that he even became defensive coordinator. Like I'll never forget like some of the first time, even when he was still position coach, and Trent Bray like was like full sprint over to like the media interviews and is like, oh yeah, no, I was just racing the guys in the 40. And it's just like, like this was, 4 or 5 years ago, probably now. And you're just like, wow, like you could see it. And I remember, again, I remember telling, the guys at the time, I, believe it, some colleagues at the time, like, that's a guy who's just kind of got that, I said defensive. I'm like, that guy's gonna be a defensive coordinator one day. Definitely did not say head coach. I won't admit to that, but like I definitely was like,
you did speak the defensive coordinator into existence.
well, I think it was not only spoken into existence, but it was really easy for Tim Tibesar to fire himself, essentially, Ryan.
Yes.
Again, I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but it's like, my goodness, when you could just look back and you're like, yeah, the personnel didn't change, and they just suddenly got great, like defensively. Like it's still, it's like
the difference was night and day too. And
it
like
was.
The first time I ever like went to a presser was when he got named interim defensive coordinator. First time I heard him speak, I'm like, hey man, I know I'm not one of your players, but I would so gladly run through a wall for you. Like that's the kind of guy that he is. Like that is exactly what type of coach Trent Bray is. Yeah.
Totally. And I think both of us will appreciate this, guys. Definitely a little more how do I say this diplomatically? More fun to talk to than the previous guy. A little less dry. Maybe a little more energy.
Straightforward.
Yeah.
just say energy is the big one.
Yeah, energy. I think some of the answers toward the end of the other guy, we're just gonna call him the other guy now, is
Who?
Exactly, right? Who is it was getting a little coach speaky for my taste, and it's like kind of Trent Bray is a nice breath of fresh air, and to that extent, we're excited to bring you guys full coverage of Trent Bray's first season, obviously here at BeaversEdge.com, and stay tuned in on Saturday as Ryan, TJ, and I are all going to be there at Reser Stadium bringing you guys complete wall-to-wall coverage. TJ is going to be there super early, providing all of his KEGO radio services too, so go say what's up to TJ, and TJ, you're gonna be there earlier. Like, are you gonna be in the sun?
Well, no, we're gonna be in the bookstore. We'll be on
Okay.
at 11:30.
Nice. Okay, so you're not gonna be like sweating all day either. So yeah,
Nope.
But still, shorts, t-shirt to head to the stadium, man. I mean,
it's gonna be a good weather day. A good
can I remind you your Arizona State days a little bit? Shorts and t-shirt at a football game.
God, I miss it. Well, at this time of year, I wouldn't even bother going because it'd be 100. I don't want to stand outside for 3.5 hours in the heat.
Arizona, man, the only place where it's like, hey,
but it's a dry heat.
You get used to it, but as you get older,
true.
like,
true.
Yeah.
Ryan,
do I really
coming
need to
over
go
from that
watch
East Coast heat, man?
Do I need to go watch Eastern Michigan when it's 105? No, I don't.
Entirely fair. Fair. But yeah, no, I'm super excited to be bringing all you guys coverage this week and hanging out with the guys at Reser. So definitely stay locked, tabbed to Beaver's Edge, Ryan, TJ, myself on Twitter, and make sure over at BeaversEdge.com and obviously on the damn board. And if you're not a subscriber to Beaver's Edge and you've missed everything from fall camp, well, gotta come on and join us. We got an awesome free trial going right now. Join the Beaver's Edge fam. You get to talk to Ryan, TJ, and me. Ask us a whole bunch of stuff on the damn board. We talk with you guys. Join the Beaver's Edge community. It's a whole lot of fun. 3:30 Reser Stadium on Saturday. CW Network if you can't make it. Oregon State, Idaho State. The Beavers will be kicking off the Trent Bray era. Appreciate everyone tuning into this edition of the Edge podcast. Big shout out to Ryan Harlan, TJ Mathewson for joining me. We will see you guys on Saturday.